right, so it's July 28th, 3:16 a.m. Two things. One, if you're enjoying the show, please go ahead and rate it on whichever app that you're using, Spotify, Apple Music, Stitcher. It helps me out a lot. Second thing that I like to add is there's actually a message that the person participating in this call left, and it's as follows. Hi. Thanks for the opportunity. I hope I didn't swear too much, though my partner says she overheard more swear words than I remember. There's one thing I'd like to add that I didn't mention. The fact that your poor mental health convinces you that others are better off without you, and by taking your all in life, you're actually doing them a favor. I wish I'd mentioned it in our chat. I think it's very relevant, so if you could mention it as an addendum, I think it might be helpful for someone. Thanks again. I hope it helps someone. Just one would be enough for me.
Yo, Jack Flex, answer the fucking phone, dude.
A person who had very real suicidal ideation and you survived by pure luck and you've lived to tell the tale. So I guess the first question that kind of comes into my mind when I read that is how long ago was it that you were having these thoughts?
It was the end of 2008, so it was some years ago.
Can you tell me more about like the headspace that you were in during that time?
Yeah, well, the background to it was I didn't get married till I was 38, and I'd only been married for 4 years. And in the last of the 4 years, the marriage was breaking down, and because I don't know if it was partly because of Catholic, maybe not really, because I'm not really a practicing Catholic, but I was very invested in the marriage, and I was desperately wanted it to work when it clearly wasn't working, and I was beating myself up trying to make something work that clearly wasn't working, and I was just going round and round in circles to a point where I became depressed. And at first I didn't realise that I was depressed, but it was pretty apparent that I was after a while.
If you don't mind me asking, what were the reasons that it wasn't working out between you both at the time?
It's difficult to say, really. I think we just stopped communicating, really, and started occupying sort of separate, became less close and did less things together. And when I voiced my concerns that I thought I was getting depressed, maybe that didn't help it. Maybe the depression started first and was fueled by the fact that marriage was struggling.
I like to kind of like establish a timeline with every person that I talk to. We already established that this happened in 2008, and I just want to flash forward to right now in 2022 really quick. Do you still keep any communication with this person or no?
No, I haven't done since about, the last time I spoke to her was probably about 3 months after the incident.
Currently, your headspace right now, how would you say that you feel about this person?
Indifferent, I'd say now.
So let's go back to 2008, where you're in this not a very good headspace overall. So the marriage wasn't really working out at the time, and then you began to have these, would you say, and again, you said that you weren't sure if it had started before it started failing?
I'm not sure. It was quite a difficult time the last 6 months. I voiced my concerns to my partner. My partner was also had suffered from depression. Sadly, it wasn't very well received. It came a bit like, my depression's worse than your depression. So it wasn't really met with any empathy or sympathy, which didn't really help my cause. So I had nobody to discuss it with. And at the time, I was the sort of bloke that wouldn't talk to my friends about it. So I internalised it all.
So this person who you were married to already told you that they were suffering from similar feelings. Did you know this since the beginning of the marriage, or?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I knew she was taking medication for depression. Yes.
Okay, so it was already well established to you that this person just this was an ongoing struggle for them in their life.
Yes.
Oh, so I guess that definitely that probably made you feel bad too, because you voiced your concerns to this person and they didn't really reciprocate, especially since, I mean, you already knew that this person was feeling their feelings. It seems like you were probably pretty supportive of them at the time too.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't express it until I was feeling it really quite bad, because I didn't want to burden her with mine. What I was suspecting was depression.
And why do you think that the communication just kind of fell off?
I think part of my depression was I ended up being quite insular. and our communication worsened, partly because of it, partly because of my own depression and the inability to discuss it between each other.
So you were the primary communicator for the most part?
No, I wouldn't say primary, if I'm honest, no. I wouldn't say I was a primary communicator, no.
But definitely you having those feelings just kind of slowed down your ability to do so.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy too? Like communication in general, I think as I get older and older, I realize how difficult communication is. It's really difficult to even just waking up and then just having or texting somebody good morning or just saying I love you sometimes can be difficult, because as a human being you just go through so many different stimuli and emotions throughout the day that sometimes it's just easier to just keep it in than to actually put it into words and express it. I think after doing it so consistently, just small things, and it doesn't even have to be anything big either, it's just, it could even be as small as going out sometimes too. It does wear down on you after a certain point. And that's me, and I'm privileged enough to say that I'm in a regular headspace. So I can only imagine how that was for you during that point in time. At what point did you realize that it was a really, really big issue?
Really, when the gaps between the depression started shortening. It started occasional, and the gaps over months shortened and shortened to a point where there were no gaps.
Tell me a little bit of the thoughts that you were having in your head at the time.
Well, catastrophizing, just feeling low sometimes without any sort of, well, the marriage was a problem. I was really internalising about that, and just generally it was like just a pall of gloom that, like I say, the gaps between the gloom just kept shortening and shortening and the worst thing about depression I found was it robs you of perspective. So while you're in the throes of it, I found myself unable to make any sort of rational decisions, rob me of all that critical thinking, really.
What do you think was the most irrational decision, or one of the most irrational decisions that you made in that headspace?
Well, it was to kill myself. That was the most irrational decision I made, without a shadow of a doubt. And it was just this gloom that was building up and building up. I liken it to, have you ever seen those TV programs where they do like special forces, where they have members of the public trying to be special forces and they go through those, where they do that interrogation and they'll put a hood over your head and then put earphones over your ears and play like loud music or crying babies, something like that, to a point where that's a bit what depression is like. It's like how it was for me. It was in the early doors, I was getting that occasionally to a point where it was all consuming and the gaps were shortening and shortening, where it was all the time, and then I just couldn't cope at that point because there was no respite. If it was occasional, you could say, well, it comes and goes. There was good days and bad days, and then in the end there were no good days.
Akin to those noises that you were describing, like the baby crying and like the headphones and stuff, would you say that the sound for you just would have been just overall negative thoughts?
Exactly, that's excellent description. Just negative thoughts, unable. So you might, maybe in the course of a healthy person's day, I don't know, you'd have 70% positive thoughts, 30% negative thoughts. Mine went from the start of it to about 50-50 to just 100%. I couldn't see anything rational to stop this negative thought process, really.
I've had a couple other people, not even on the show, but just in my personal life, when they describe the symptoms of depression to me, and they describe to me how difficult it can be to even just get up and just brush your teeth, and how difficult it can be to just get up and clean your room and just do very, very simple tasks because of this headspace that you're in.
Everything I was doing in the real world at work was laboured and more difficult, definitely.
Did you ever have like a point in time where you had like a cry for help?
Yes. Not prior to that. I'd not voiced any suicidal thoughts to anybody. But the build-up and build, I was just going back to that thing about the comparison with the sort of interrogation type training, where in the end, where you just can't cope and they just hand in their armband because they just can't take it anymore. That's how I felt, really. I just made the call to myself. I can't do this anymore. I can't feel like this all the time. I must have had some rational thoughts, or maybe in moments of lucidity, because I thought if I do this, I know the carnage I will leave behind. But the more powerful drive was to not feeling like that all the time. I just wanted it to end.
This leads to a whole other conversation too. So even like considering the like you said, like the carnage that you leave behind, and doing this action, it was almost like you completely understood this, but these emotions were just so unbearable that even with knowing the consequence, it just wasn't worth it. You would rather, in that headspace, just get away from these feelings than even care too much about.
That's why I always think other people have had a family member or a loved one take their own life. They always, without having experienced it, I think there's lots of suggestions like they're selfish, or just so many questions. Why, what, how could they? You have to inhabit these feelings to know that when the bigger drive is to stop them happening than it is referencing the real world outside that. Well, you can't reference it, because like I said, the depression stops you rationalising. So your primary focus is to stop feeling shit all day, every day. And it's just how much tolerance you have of that. Some will have more greater tolerance than others. But in the end, I thought I just can't inhabit this space 24/7.
Did you go through with this and then actually attempt it?
No. How it came about was I decided I was going to do it. I decided I couldn't cope with these feelings anymore and I was going to take my own life. How it came about was, well, just to say another thing, at that point where I made that call, I was actually really calm, and for the first time in, well, as long as I could remember since I had the depression, I felt strangely elated that it was going to end. There was a finer end to it. So, yeah.
I wanted to clarify about that. So as someone who, you were just clearly deep into idealizing this action, what would you say to people? I would say I have the audacity to say that people who actually go through and commit it are selfish, or people who actually go through and commit it are just bad people.
Oh, I hear that a lot, and if you hadn't experienced it, I can see why people would draw those conclusions. But it's a bit like your body's being stress tested all day, every day, and eventually, however it is, whatever anybody's threshold, eventually, at some point, that depression has got hold of you to break it. It's found your breaking point, and you'd have to experience it to know what it feels like to be that broken to a point where you can't take any more of it. There's no joy in your life. There's no anything in your life. It's a bit like a dead man walking, really. Some days you just feel nothing. It's just, I don't know. You certainly don't feel any joy. There's nothing to uplift your life. You're just immersed in this headspace of negativity or nothingness, and it just overwhelms you. You feel like a totally different person. It's quite a head fuck, really.
I want to bring it back to this moment that you were describing, where you were at this moment of, I guess you could say, peace, when you were. Yeah,
I think it was peace. Yeah, it was peace.
So can you describe to me like the physical situation that you were in and like the setting?
Yeah, I was still living with my wife at the time, and I said I came from a town about 70 miles away from where we were living at the time. I still had family and friends, obviously, in my hometown. It wasn't unusual for me to visit them about once every month, once every 2 months for a weekend. Sometimes my partner would come, wife would come with me, sometimes she wouldn't, depending on whether it was a sort of lads' night or not, you know. And I wrote suicide letters. I wrote 3 suicide letters. I wrote one to my wife, I wrote one to my family, and I wrote one to my best friend. And then I hid them in a wardrobe. Now, I know you're going to say, gotta be cry felt, you knew you would get discovered. It wasn't. I hid them somewhere where my wife never went in my wardrobe, ever. She never did. I wasn't looking for them to be found. I didn't want them to be found. So I put them inside a sock drawer. I think it was the top of the wardrobe where I kept socks, or a sock drawer. Can't remember now. I put them in there, and my plan was I'd arrange a weekend with my mates. I'd go back and then have a last hurrah, as it were, and then I'd come back and I'd be doing the act, taking my life, committing suicide. That's what it is. Can't call it anything else. Can't give it a sweet name. During the middle of that week, I was planning on doing it. The following week, after the weekend, yeah.
What were the sequence of events or thoughts that made you change your mind?
I didn't change my mind. The letters got found while I was away.
Oh wow!
I was fully prepared to go through with it. I had no deviation on my plan. I was going to go through with it.
So really quick. That's pretty crazy. And I mean, and I do fully believe you when you say that you didn't mean for them to be found. But So since you put them in a place that you didn't think that they were going to be found, like now looking back on
Well,
it.
not over that weekend, and I thought they'll probably get found in a week, couple of weeks maybe.
Yeah, and that makes sense too.
Not in that state. Not in. I went away to my hometown on the Friday. I stayed. It was either Friday or Saturday. I went out with my friends Saturday night. I was intending to come back on the Sunday evening, I think, and then I was going to commit suicide the following week. That was my plan. I was staying at my brother's house, and on the Sunday afternoon before I was due to go back, they were found, and then the phone call came through to my brother's house. And what the fucking hell's he doing? And just that load of aggression, which isn't surprising, is it really? And
looking back on it, do you think that was like just like an act of God? Do you think that was just unluckiness or luckiness? Like, how do you look at that?
Well, if I look at it now, I'm bloody lucky. I didn't see it that way at the time. No, I didn't want to be distracted from my plan.
Well, let's go back to the moment where you had, your brother just got this phone call. And first of all, you're getting faced with this aggression, which isn't, in my opinion, I'm sure in your opinion, is not the right way to even go about handling it.
It's probably two ways, isn't it? It's understandable, but you would have think after the initial, I thought it was over the top, which probably says quite a lot about my relationship, really. That rather than, how is he, any sympathy out there? But I wasn't looking for that. I didn't care, really. I ended up checking myself into, I ended up going to the local hospital. In fact, my brother rang a local mental health crisis team, and they suggested I go to the hospital. And when I went to the hospital, they said to me, how do you feel about being discovered? I said, I don't feel anything. I was saying to her, I remember saying saying it to the doctors at the time, because they were assessing me and seeing how well I was, did I need to be kept in? Well, I was clearly hard to myself at the time, but I remember saying to him, I used to be in the army when I was younger, and I remember we were in an army firing range once, and there was like, we're using live ammunition, and one man goes down, shoots cover, the other one runs forward, cross cover. And there was this lad in front of me who tripped over with a loaded gun. The muzzle went under his chin and he pulled the trigger, but he had his safety catch on and he just froze, and he was just in shot, stood there, and he had to be led backwards, walking backwards off the range because his head had gone, he'd frozen. And that's how I felt in that moment. I didn't have a plan B. I was just numb.
Following this entire event, you got found out, and then you were in this hospital. What led you to having a better outlook on life? Did you get medicated?
Well, because I was in a different medical area, I had to go back to where I lived, 70 miles away, because that's how it works in the UK. If you have a problem, your local health authority have to take care of you. So I had to go back to, well, in fact, I think my brother my wife certainly wasn't for seeing me at that time. I think my brother may have driven me. I can't remember, my head wasn't in the right place. But somehow I ended up going back to my hometown and checking into a psychiatric ward, where I was assessed and deemed to need psychiatric help. And I was in there for a month. And one thing I discovered, I remember talking to a nurse there, and she said, that about 80% of people or more don't actually complete suicide. And hospitals are full of failed attempts with a lot of badly damaged people, brain damage and whatever, how the consequences of their lack of completion. And that was a real eye-opener to me. Also, I saw a lot of people who, everybody else is a bit nutter, aren't they, except you, so you think. When you go to a psychiatric ward, there's obviously a lot of people with some quite complex mental health needs. And I was able to observe these people on a daily basis. I thought, I don't want this to be my life going forward. And I decided that perhaps the best strategy was probably leave the marriage and see whether my mental health problems were apart from them, because of them, or a bit of both. And so I decided I'd go formulate a plan to not go home, rent an apartment, and see how things went on my own. And by that time I was also receiving antidepressants as well, which really helped me. I describe, like you get on a radio wave, you get peaks and troughs. Right, to me, when you're depressed, you're at the bottom of the trough with no ladder, and the walls are slippy and you can't get up. What I found that antidepressants did for me was they firstly they take the edge off, so it's a bit like polyfiller. So they fill it in gradually at the bottom, and then they fill it in a bit more the longer you take them. Then to a point where you're halfway up, or just over half, and you're peering over the top. And then you get back some reasoning and thinking skills, and then you can start to think about, because at the time I didn't know what I was going to do. Like I said, I had no plan B, but once I took the antidepressant and they stopped me feeling so anxious and shit all the time, I found some of me critical thinking start to return, and then I started to develop plans of what strategies and what I might do to get myself out of that situation.
Are you thankful for your experience in the psychiatric ward?
Yeah, oh yeah, saved my life. Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any other particular moments in the psychiatric ward that you think you might have made a realization, or that you look back on?
I think it was a gradual combination of being away from the environment that wasn't helping me in the first place, that was added, I don't know percentage-wise how much the environment was causal, but being away from that, I had some good therapy, some good treatment. I think it was a combination of all those things that gradually nursed me back to a point where I felt I could leave and I could try and begin to get back the rest of my life. My wife was pretty clear, she wanted nothing to do with me after that, nothing whatsoever. It was non-negotiable. That sort of, in a way, made it a bit more of a binary decision. Well, I don't have to mess around with that, do I? So trying to work my way back or what have you. So my problem really was just about getting myself back to health.
Did she ever make an effort to communicate with you while you were in the psych ward, or at any point?
She came a couple of times, but she would very much speak about me, not to me, to the doctors.
Why?
She made up her mind. She'd made up, on the day she found those notes, she made up her mind. She wanted nothing more to do with me. She was not up for any rescuing or mediation in the marriage at all. No, definitely not, no.
It just seems as though she didn't have a genuine feeling of care, almost.
Like I say, my rational skills weren't the best at the time, but that's what other friends and family who visited me, they drew that conclusion. And I was being a bit excused, or maybe it was a bit shit on her, but they were saying that to me. Her behaviour was quite strange. There's no empathy or whatever. Quite odd behaviour on her part.
And looking back on that, like this lack of empathy, does it make you feel as though you almost, like, in a weird sense, like almost like dodged a bullet overall? Because that's just so strange to me.
Does, yeah. I look back now and I think, shit, how did I ever get in that mess? How the hell did I ever get so... Yeah. How did my life even become close to topping? When I was younger, I had a conversation with a friend. You know, as you do, you talk all sorts of stuff with your best mate, man. You say, oh, do you think you could ever kill yourself? I said, no chance. Not me. I wouldn't let myself get that low, I said. Prior to the depression, I used to have a sort of mental coping strategy of, if I was thinking a bit negative, I'd arrest that thought, and not go down a spiral with it. I'd just mentally change subject. And that's what I said, that's what I do. I mentally change subject. So I could never get that low that I'd ever considered taking my life. Pushed forward 15 years later, and the fellow who thought he could never even entertain it wanted it.
Her behavior still, like, almost like baffles me. It's so surprising that she had that.
It does, yeah. I mean, I definitely does. Yeah, I don't know how the hell I thought it was weird.
Do you think, when you reflect on the relationship as a whole, do you think that it was overall just kind of weird too? Like, did she have this behavior all the time, or did it just come out more so?
Well, it's hard to put your finger on certain things, but dodge the bullet is a very good description. And I do just think back and think, God, how they even ended up, before an odd thing though, before the marriage, I remember thinking you know how you can get like bride's nerves and groom's nerves. I remember thinking the day before I had cold feet, so something must have told me something back then. But you get caught up in the moment. I wouldn't be the first or the last that went ahead anyway with doubts.
The timeline is, you went through the psych ward, and then you get this apartment. You're kind of like getting back on your feet. You thankfully have gotten back these critical thinking skills that you didn't have due to your mindset. And this is still 2008, or is this 2009?
This is just I moved into, the incident happened in early December, when the letters were found. Early December 2008. I was in the hospital, I think, till either the end of December or early January, and then I found myself an apartment, and I moved straight from the hospital to this apartment. So I just went straight to this apartment.
From that point until now in 2022, how do you feel about yourself? How are you feeling when you look back on that moment?
Well, I was on antidepressants for about 18 months. A bit foolishly, I just stopped them, but I can honestly say I've not had the depression return since then. Maybe I shouldn't have been so stupid as to just stop them. But no, and at the same time though, I met somebody shortly after, another woman who's I've been partners with now since then, just a month after. And that's been the biggest benefit to my mental health by far, yeah, definitely. I think if I was left moping around in the flat, I wouldn't have been so chipper, really. I might have been down in the doldrums for quite a lot longer, but it's amazing what a new relationship does for your mental health.
So it seems like this is just like a overall, definitely has its lows, but it seems to be a successful story overall.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm keen to let others know that there can be life afterwards. It doesn't have to be a life sentence. Even coming back from suicidal thoughts, at that time I was 100% going to do it. I couldn't see anything beyond that. I have a great life now, and I'm a mate. Well, not a mate. I don't know what. I'm thankful. That's what I am. I'm bloody thankful that I didn't complete. I'd have lost out on this great life and fabulous years. And I mean, at the time I was 43. I'm 56 now. So yeah, life is good. Life can be good. Just even having terrible mental health that can drag you to those depths can be improved with the right medication, the right support. It can be a happy ending. Sadly, it doesn't end that way for everybody, but it shouldn't be a death sentence. It nearly was for me, but I'm grateful now and came out of it the right end. And if ever I had any recurring mental health problems, well, another thing I learned as well. Oh, another saviour for me. Talking. I never used to talk to anybody about my mental health. For the first time ever, when I went into the psychiatric ward, I learned to talk about it. You know what a pressure off your shoulders that is. And that's my message to talk. Don't bottle it up, because you will spiral downwards if you bottle it up. Talking is Reese.
And if done properly, it could be genuinely just an art, being able to express yourself and get rid of these emotions and have somebody give their own thoughts and opinions from their experience and their perspective. I mean, this is pretty much what the show is all about to begin with. It's humans are the only species on the planet that are able to naturally develop grammar and syntax at the ages from 2 to 4. Which by proxy means, at least in my opinion, from my interpretation, that we're meant to be able to express ourselves and meant to be able to talk about it. And I think that that's something can be easily forgotten just in the whims of life and day to day and between work and X, it's easy, especially with how different genders are socialized between male, female, and any other too, how men are just kind of socialized to not, I would say, overall be as expressive, especially depending on your home life and other situations and other factors, of course. But it's definitely something that I think we should all get to doing more if we have the opportunity and the privilege to be able to do so.
That would be my message to you. Definitely talk. I mean, British men are particularly repressed. I was a good example of that. Terrible. Just wouldn't talk about the emotions. And now I'm very open. And it's such a weight off your shoulders, because every sort of ill feeling unshared snowballs inside you. It just builds up to a point, well, possibly where I was at. But another thing is, I just say to people are very harsh on people who commit suicide or have suicidal thoughts, and it's so easy to say, they're just being selfish, or pull yourself together. Unless you experience it, it can bring the strongest down, and real stronger people than me have done it. And just think, where must they have been? Spare a thought for where they were before they took their own life. What must have been going on in their head for them to take that ultimate call? And just be thankful you've not been there, because I tell you, it's a fucking horrible place to be in.